kind of take it step by step. And like
Can I just interject? That's one example of where management hasn't changed, because because for years I've worked with the former Cat Stevens, Yusuf Islam, and he told me that the way he got out of his Decca deal with Sir Roger Lewis, I think it was, and he wanted to go with Chris Blackwell at Islands, was that he delivered a 40-minute classical opus, one song, two sides of an album, and said, "This is my new record," and they dropped him instantly, and he signed to Island and released, sold about 40 million albums over the next two records. So, hey.
I mean, it wasn't that Sony wasn't interested to work with us, but what you find, it was in fashion for a little while to do these, all-in deals, or record labels wanting to commission on all sides of the income. But they weren't really willing or seeing the importance or the necessity to actually invest in putting knowledgeable and skilled people in the right positions.
They didn't know how to deal with it.
They didn't know how to deal with it. So we kind of didn't either. But we had a really vested interest. We had one priority, which is, you have your one relationship with your artist. So you either employ or you get strategic partnerships with the people who do know, or you wise up and you find out yourself. And so, in answer to your question as well, what kind of skills does it take? It's fully encompassing. You need legal, you need to know about publishing, you need to know about records, you need to know about marketing, you need to know about branding, you need to know about artwork, you need to know about everything that makes an artist's career.
Again, going back to the U2 experience, where I was spoilt with U2, and I didn't really notice, was that from the moment I started working with them in 1984, they already had a system that effectively delivered records to the record label absolutely completed. Branding was done, the artwork was done, the photography was done, the record was made, and we barely could have a conversation with them about the choice of the first single, and in many respects we lost the battle, even if we tried to have a conversation with them about it. And in many respects, again, running Island Records in the UK, I adopted that attitude with my artists, that I allowed them that freedom to determine their own futures and their own decisions about their releases. But I found it very different stepping out and becoming feral and becoming on the wild side, managing artists, a gamekeeper turned poacher, which is what I became. But I carried with me the same conviction that unless I used all of my skills and my artist skills and built a team around the artist, then in effect we'd be abrogating control onto third parties that wouldn't necessarily have the artist's vision at the heart of it. And I think that artist vision thing is something that has become increasingly more empowered for artists and artist managers. So, James, do you want to talk about that too? Your artists have full vision of how they work with their artwork and everything else that they do?
Definitely been heavily involved in all things creative from the beginning, designing the artwork for the albums, obviously on the music side itself, marketing. One of the band is actually from a marketing background, used to be marketing director at Warner Music, which helps.
Right, okay.
So yeah, absolutely heavily involved across the board in all of those areas.
And Eric, how about you?
Yeah, I think I always felt that my job is to facilitate the artist, and that means I would always encourage them to effectively take as much control as possible, because whatever record they're releasing, they're the only ones that are going to have to go through it 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. The people at the record companies or whoever advise them, they'll be somewhere else.
They'll be moved on.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I've always tried to push them to take as much responsibility as possible. And we're working with one artist called The Knife. They're almost impossible for a major record company system, because they do everything themselves. They're effectively artists as opposed to entertainers, I think, and performers. And so you have to create something that makes sense for them. They would not do any syncs, although one of their songs was covered and was very successful on that Bouncing Ball advert. But when you work with people like that, you just facilitate the vision, and you try to find the right people that can follow that path. And to me, that's what we're doing now. We basically initially tried to sign The Knife to a label, but no one liked their music, so we had to release it ourselves. We had a similar situation with Robin when we started working with her. She had a record that was successful in Sweden, and we couldn't get it signed anywhere. I think it's probably me who can't get it signed, because when they become successful, obviously people just like, I would work with that artist, but not with a manager.
What do the 8 people do in your office? That's what I'm intrigued by.
They get paid to
Well, they
do
get-
all the work whilst I'm in Ibiza.
It is a leading question because I think that's also part of the new paradigm is that we're having to provide much more infrastructure than we
Yeah.
have done because the record companies aren't carrying that staff anymore, and I'm finding more and more that I have to. I have a product manager that works for me, international product manager. I'm looking for internet specialism at the moment, and I'm finding that these are important. I have a sync manager that works for me, and I find that these are really important ways of working.
Oh, completely. And I was at the position when Moby's Play became successful. We were sitting there and hoping that it would sell 250,000 records. When it sold like 14 million or whatever it did, you then have to suddenly ask yourself, oh, this is this money coming in, what do you do with it? And at that point, I decided I wanted to have a company. I don't want to be his manager and forever be known for that alone. So I thought I'll just invest all the money into a company, and that's why I felt like you add the services that make sense, and so that's why we have 8 people. Otherwise, we couldn't manage as many artists as what they do. But they're almost, in a kind of weird way, they're a little bit like record companies because they have different positions and they have expertise.
Yeah.
And so that's how this comes together. And I think following on from what happened to The Knife, where we released that ourselves, and Robin had to release it ourselves, no one wanted it. We now, which is kind of weird, now Moby's come to us and said, well, hey, you've released a couple of records. Don't want to be with a normal label anymore. Can you just release my record? So that's what we're trying to do. Spectacularly fail probably and get
Well, then
fired.
that brings us on to the thorny issue that nobody really wanted to talk about in the green room, which is how the new deals work. And we're only going to talk very briefly about it because obviously there's a lot of private information contained within there. But I do know that around this table that there are still conventional 20% management deals. But it's been inconceivable to me. Somebody with my age and experience, I feel that I'd be a rather expensive lawyer if I was a London lawyer. And it seems inconceivable to me that sometimes I can work for thousands of hours on a project only to find myself falling foul just because I take a holiday. It has happened to me once with one artist who wanted me there because he needed York stone to put in his patio one afternoon, and I was in France, and that really did happen to me. And it seems inconceivable to me too sometimes that managers get paid at the very end of the food chain when the very last plectrum has been picked up or the very last turntable has been put away and everybody associated with that has been paid. Well, maybe there's something left over for the manager to share. And that's a very tough position to be in if you're running a modern music business. And so I think a lot of us now have got to the point where we're creating new partnerships, especially when we're providing in the way that Eric is talking about. In fact, everybody here is talking about providing services that go so far beyond simply managing the old-fashioned rights. We're now releasing records, we're now running publishing companies, we're now running tours. In my case, I have promoted on behalf of Lemon Jelly, who I've managed for years. I've done absolutely everything for my artists. And in fact, we're now creating company shells around those artists into which the rights go, and out of which I am a shareholder within the organisation and have a long-term ownership of IP. And that's the way that we've chosen to do it. And that also includes one quite big superstar artist who volunteered it, in fact, realising that the old paradigm is shifting. So I'm intrigued to know, I'm going to start with you, Min. You don't have to reveal trade secrets. You can just say, are you running the old model or are you running the new model?
A mix, really, if you want the truth. I mean, I have different artists on different deals. The old school deal is that you work for a 20% commission on any money that you make, but any money you make comes after costs. So actually, you could make no money and make 20% of no money. And that is a deal that's been in life since I can remember, to be frank. I'll fast forward now to modern life. The fact of the matter is, I work with Carl Cox. We've worked together for 10 years now. 8 years ago, we started a club at Space. This is an example. And Carl's input is, obviously he comes, he's the ambassador, he is the DJ, he is the life, soul, and party of that party. He is the head figure. Then what happens in the background is you've got 12 nights that need booking other DJs, contracts needs to be done, promotions need to be put in place, printing needs to be done, all the gritty. We probably have 40 staff. I know Dave's out there somewhere, so he'll correct me. 45 staff that work just for 12 nights on this island to make that party work. So Carl and I, on particular things, we have a deal and we become partners. Not necessarily 50-50, don't get me wrong. And that now is the modern deal, because I have staff in my office that just work on Carl. I have a dedicated person that just works on Carl's website. We have over 1,000 messages a day that come in when he's playing in Brazil, when he's playing in Peru, when he's playing in Italy. They're all asking questions. They all want answers. They all want to know what's the T-shirt, what's the record, what's the set. All of these people need answering, and in a modern world where we live, frankly, the internet, mobile phones are the most important communication to anybody, and those things need the uptake. And that's where you need to invest the staff. And I think what happens is, in a modern deal, is as a manager, I invest in people and staff to make sure everything is taken care for. And the outcome is that you become a partner with your partner, effectively. Does that make sense?
Ollie, I'm going to move to you. You've got away with it lightly. Come on.
Yeah.
Cough.
My background is that I was a music lawyer before I was a manager, and I was an artist lawyer predominantly, so I would do management contracts for my artists, and we would obviously want to get the best possible deal for them. And those 20% deals were pretty standard, and those contracts were pretty easy to negotiate in the end. And so when I started as a manager, those were the deals that I was doing. And the first act that I worked with was Simeon Mobile Disco, and it was a traditional arrangement, and we've persisted along that route, and it's been good for all of us. As we've gone on, and they're in a traditional record deal with a label in the UK, and then license deals around the world, and that actually really works for them. What we found, though, going into 2009 is that we have other artists. Boy 8-Bit is our newest artist, and we're going to be providing a whole load of different services for him than we provide for Simeon Mobile Disco. We'll be doing a lot more of the work. We have an office of 4 people. We're about to take on our 5th in the next month. Our overhead is unfortunately growing because we have to provide those services. So, do we stick to the model that we had previously, or do we try and carve out a different deal? I don't know where it'll end up, but I do know that we're going to have to find a different way of working with our artists, and partnership is one way of doing it. We also manage Annie Mac, Radio 1 DJ. Not, I would say, technically an artist in that she doesn't make music of her own, but she certainly DJs, and she certainly has a really powerful brand in the Annie Mac Presents events, and she has deals in place with a large UK national promoter. She has a deal in place with a major label for compilations. We provide a whole load of different services to her than we provide for Simeon Mobile Disco or to Little Boots, who's signed to a major label. There's no reason why those management deals need to be the same for each artist. It's just like I was saying at the beginning, we provide the services for our artists that they need to facilitate what they want to do, and our deals with them should be addressed accordingly.
Olga, anything to say?
The basis of most my deals, or actually all my deals, is the traditional 20%. And then depending on what additional work or what additional projects are required, so if we come to a point where we feel we need to start up a label, then we'll do a deal for that label. But the management work goes under the 20% deal. If we need to run the website, we need to run that through the company, or if we need to do something specifically on sync or development of music for movies, etc., etc. We take that basically on a case-by-case basis. Same as if it requires developing a series of events and so on. We do the deals there, and I'm sure that at one point that's going to grow into a more template of a deal. But at the moment, it's more of a case-by-case basis.
Right. Anybody care to fill in from the other side of the table there?
Fill in what?
I think we're on a move on now, because we're now about 35 minutes into our hour. And I think it'd be interesting to hear from the floor if anybody has questions for us. We've been a little bit static from the table here. So our first question.
I'd just like to ask the panel what their opinion is of emerging companies such as Mobito, whether they view them as a blessing or a curse for management. And just a personal question for Caroline, EMI is, by September, going to owe one of my artists millions of pounds. Do you think, as his manager, I should be worried about collecting this money?
No pressure.
Can you sit on Wall Street, Caroline?
It's what?
Can you sit on Wall Street?
Well, yeah. I can't say I know that much about the internal finances, but I do know that the new machine seems to be working really well, and they've had a lot of success recently.
Have you got two artists signed there now, Caroline?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
No, I've just got
one,
David.
okay, right.
I hope you get your money. I don't need to speak to, but
Anybody want to tackle the Mobuto question?
I don't know.
Maybe you want to explain what Mobuto is to people who don't know.
Idea.
I don't know.
Go on,
In
Richard,
which case,
you-
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, don't do the deal. There's your answer.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Maurizio, representing an events and booking agency. We are an art net, like a kind of hackers, with some office in Spain, in Belgium, in Italy. And I just want you to consider the booking aspect. As you know, many strange things are happening when you book artists. You have an official booking agency, you in charge usually, and then you have some exclusive sub-agents, local agents, and many things like that. This sometimes is a problem because the art is not free to go around. You have artists sometimes losing important events, and I want to know if you think there is something better you can do in the future, just considering the booking aspect.
I'm wondering whether who would be best to answer this. Maybe you, Olga, because you book as well, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, where you have exclusive relationships with sub-agents, which you will decide from territory to territory, it will usually be based on experience. The reason to work with an exclusive agent is because you depend on that person to find you the best gigs and the best deals for the best profile. So that would include...
Yeah, but just from the artistic point of view,
But
sometimes
that would
the exclusive, it means you lose some nice opportunities anyway.
Well, that shouldn't be the case. I mean, an agent is there just like a manager to represent the interest of the artist. That includes their creative output, and that should be part of their, of what they're supposed to do. If that's not happening, if the artist is missing out on opportunities, creatively or financially otherwise, obviously they're not doing a good job.